It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
The world will little note no longer remember what we say, but it can never forget what they did.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Hello and welcome to Eccentric Earth, the podcast where I, your host Amy Walker, delve into stories from across history with a guest who has no idea what the topic's going to be. Joining me for this episode is Han Burch.
Hello.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good.
You were researching until pretty late last night for this episode.
I was, yeah. I'm honestly, this is the first episode where I feel nervous.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Because of how much there is in this, and the fact that, well, people listening to this will see that this is labelled a part one, mainly because there's so much more to this than I thought there'd be, and unless there is some miracle in the recording where we talk really, really quick, this is going to be a 3-episode story. So that's scary for me because it just feels so big. I've never done anything like that.
So are you gonna tease it out? Are you gonna do all 3 in 1 week, or is this going to be the next 3 weeks content?
I don't know. I'm thinking this is definitely coming out Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking part 2 Thursday, part 3 the following Monday.
Ah, okay.
You know, I was thinking, well, I can hold it back, and you know, with the other recording I've already got scheduled this week, that would be like a month's worth of episodes, all there, ready to go. I don't have to panic, but it's like, I think it being a multi-part, people would probably want it a bit quicker. So
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the plan. So if you're listening to this, fingers crossed you will get part 2 on Thursday. And if not, I'm a liar and we'll go back and re-edit this to remove this whole thing.
like that. Yeah, I mean, I've only been waiting. Oh, you asked me what, about 4 or 5 days ago?
Yeah, not too long ago.
And then you gave me a couple of sort of, not, I wouldn't call them hints, but you've said a couple of things.
Okay.
About what this is about.
So what have I said to you then, for the listeners? You know?
It's a person.
Okay.
It's interesting. You've learned a lot that you didn't know about before.
Yeah.
And it is somehow related to current events.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you said to me.
And you turned around last night and said you've got a suspicion you know what it is.
No, I didn't say that. I said I have a theory. I could be very, very wrong.
A theory it's the same kind of thing, you know.
True. Okay, so okay. No, I'm not going to call them a theory. I'm going to call them a guess. I have 2 guesses.
Ooh,
one which I think is more likely than the other. So this one I think is the least likely.
Yeah.
John McCain.
Okay.
And the one which I think is more likely, but you know, I have no idea if I'm anywhere near the mark, is Robert Mueller.
Okay.
So those are my 2 guesses.
Some interesting guesses.
Yeah. Maybe, even though it's going to be like literally, you're going to tell me in what 40-50 seconds time. You still wait that 40-50 seconds, aren't you, until you start the episode properly.
Yeah. Even though the audience at this point know exactly what the topic is, and they will know whether you're right or wrong, if one of your guesses is right or if none of them are right.
Oh, so really I'm the only fool?
Yeah, you're the only person who doesn't know.
Oh, hooray. My cat doesn't know either.
Ah, well, that makes it fairer, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think he cares.
So, shall we get started so you can find out if one of your theories was right?
Yeah.
Before we get into our story, I just want to take a moment to talk to you about the Cosplay Journal, a new coffee table magazine by friend of the show Holly Rose, focusing on the diversity and craft of cosplay. The Cosplay Journal is out now, and I've read the first issue. It's a great read, full of informative articles and beautiful photographs. I'm a geek myself, but I'm not a cosplayer, yet I still found a lot in this magazine to give me a deeper look into this part of geek culture. The book has craft-focused articles on sewing, armour building and makeup, as well as some interviews with some incredible cosplayers, some professional, some simply being the perfectionist amateur. They ask, are cosplay guests worth it in their opinion piece article, and have a handy guide for cosplayers on how to survive a con, which is advice worth reading even if you're not a cosplayer. The Cosplay Journal is available now. You can find it on Amazon for just $9.99, so make sure you pick up your copy today so that you don't miss out. John Sidney McCain III.
Okay.
How do you feel about the topic now then? Are you okay with this? Happy? Excited?
Yeah, no. Out of both of them, I know like 2 or 3 things about most of them. And in fact, the other day there was like somebody on my Facebook did post a sort of like biographical breakdown, and because I already had it in my head that you might be doing it, I didn't read it.
Nice.
So I'm really interested, especially because there's also been quite a lot of division about him now that he has died,
which is what put me onto this in the first place. It's not just cashing in on someone's death.
No.
It's I wanted to find out why some people are like, fuck him, he's a monster, and other people are like, no, he's a good guy. It's like, those are fairly polar views, and I want to know more about this guy and why.
Yes, and so because I've seen the division, and because I've I don't know anything about him, I was like, well, if that is Amy's topic, great, because I know I trust her research, I trust her sourcing, so it's going to be a really good opportunity to find out about him, so I can then make my own judgment. And if it is Robert Mueller or somebody else, then I'll go and research later.
I do want to say since reading about McCain and researching, I've developed some feelings and opinions of my own, which I didn't have before, but I'm not going to go into that until the end. If at the end of each episode we want to talk about that section of his life, we can, but I'm presenting this as unbiased and just straight down the middle factual as I can. So I'm not going to go into this with any sort of bias or with any kind of agenda. So hopefully the listeners will be happy about that, because I normally try not to give any sort of bias on these topics.
There's a difference between personal bias, personal opinion based on fact, and trying to skew those facts to fit your agenda prior to that. And that's more of a right-wing thing to do.
Which is why I will not be doing that.
No.
Right. So let's get into John McCain.
Yeah, let's get into John McCain.
So, John Sidney McCain III was born on August 29th, 1936, at a United States Navy hospital at Coco Solo Naval Air Station in the Panama Canal Zone, which was at the time considered to be among the unincorporated territories of the United States. His parents were Navy officer John S. Jack McCain Jr. and Roberta McCain. He had a younger brother named Joe and an older sister named Sandy. John McCain's grandparents were natives of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Texas, and much of his ancestry was Southern on both his mother's and father's sides.
Can I say one thing, Amy?
Yeah?
Because I've heard you do this a few times. Arkansas, not Arkansas.
They should fucking spell it that way then. Where's the W?
All right, Dave Anthony.
Yeah, I am fully aware I've gone full dollop, but because I've just listened to the New Zealand episode as well, so I know how much trouble he has with pronunciations. But that is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Okay.
I personally, I quite like the idea of renaming it Arkansas, though.
Well, if I don't remember how it's meant to be pronounced, it may be renamed that again in future episodes. Where was I? Okay. The McCain's family patrilineage ancestral home was in Mississippi's Carroll County, where they owned and ran a 2,000-acre plantation in Tico from 1848 till 1952. The plantation had slaves before the American Civil War, some of whom's descendants share the surname and call themselves the Black McCains. There was a gasp.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you sort of said Mississippi and then said plantation.
Yeah, you knew that was coming.
And I was like, I don't know when the American Civil War was. But yeah, I'm pretty sure if it was before the American Civil War, they would have. So they gave the slaves their surname.
Yeah, quite often slaves would have their owners' surnames. So when a lot of slaves became free, they kept those names.
Well, also that, you know, when the white plantation owners were fucking the slaves.
Yep, that as well. Well, you say fucking, raping.
Yes, sorry, raping.
I'm sure there were occasions where it could have been consensual, but I think the majority of it was sexual assault.
Well, you know, can you consent to sex when you're the property of something? When you're seen as property and not a person?
True. Yeah. Okay. 100% rape.
Yeah.
After the Civil War, the family became sharecroppers. McCain's father and paternal grandfather were both Navy admirals and were the first father-son pair to achieve 4-star admiral rank.
Wow.
Mm.
You know what? Is 5-star the highest?
As far as I'm aware, yes.
Yeah, sounds American. But 5-star would be. Yeah. Do you know anything about the star system? About how it works?
Not off the top of my head, no. I know it's Brigadier General, Major General. I'm not sure what the next ranks are, but it's the stars are like the more stars you got, the higher the general you are.
Oh right, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my basic knowledge of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be honest, most of that comes from Stargate SG-1.
Both scientifically and historically accurate.
Yes. I'm going to assume that the show about the aliens who built the pyramids and seeded mankind across the galaxy is at least factually correct in its military structure. No, I know they had military consultants on that show, so I'm pretty sure I'm right about that one.
You never know, they might be right about everything.
His grandfather, Admiral John S. Slew McCain Sr., was a pioneer of aircraft carrier operations who, in 1942, commanded all land-based air operations in support of the Guadalcanal campaign, and who ultimately, in 1944 and 1945, aggressively led the Fast Carrier Task Force in the Pacific Ocean Theatre of World War II.
Wow.
Yeah, his military family, his father and grandfather, big shots in the military, like serious heavy hitters, which is one of the things I never knew about him.
No, I didn't even know that he was from a military family.
Mm. His operations off the Philippines and Okinawa and airstrikes against Formosa and the Japanese home islands caused tremendous destruction of Japanese naval and air forces in the closing periods of the war. His death, 4 days after the Japanese surrender ceremony in Tokyo Bay, was front-page news.
So that sounds like that he wasn't killed in action.
Nope. As far as I'm aware, he just passed away after the war.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess I don't know. Didn't really get much time to celebrate his victory or anything, did he?
No, but at least he did get to see it.
Yeah.
4 days after, it's like he knows he helped bring the war to a close.
Mm-hmm. Although, to be fair, I think it was more the atomic bombs that brought the war to a close than any naval encounters.
And that shouldn't really be celebrated.
No.
His father, Jack McCain, was a submarine commander in several theatres of operation in World War II and was decorated with both the Silver Star Medal and the Bronze Star Medal. For his first 10 years, Johnny McCain, the nickname he was given as part of a family tradition of distinguishing the generations because all three of them were called John, was frequently uprooted as his family followed his father to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and other stations in the Pacific Ocean. Summer vacations were sometimes spent at the family's Tico plantation, but McCain always felt his heritage was military, not Southern.
Yeah, I mean there is a distinct culture surrounding those kids that grow up on army being shunted around foreign countries, but still living in a sort of very Americanized way. That was like seems to be the majority of his.
Sorry, what was that?
That just seems to be like the majority of his upbringing, rather than the family plantation.
McCain attended whatever naval-based school was available, often to the detriment of his education, as schools were sometimes substandard and their curricula often erratic. After the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, his father was absent for long stretches. His formal education was supplemented by the efforts of his mother, who took advantage of the family's many long-distance travels to expose him to historical and cultural sites. He later wrote, "She taught me to find so much pleasure in life that misfortune could not rob me the joys of living."
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. A Republican, she also made sure that he followed current events, although his parents avoided outward partisan affiliations due to his father's military career. After World War II ended, his father stayed in the Navy, sometimes working political liaison posts. The family settled in Northern Virginia, and McCain attended the educationally stronger St. Stephen's School in Alexandria from 1946 to 49. To his family, McCain had long been quiet, dependable and courteous, but whilst at St. Stephen's he began to develop an unruly and defiant streak. Another 2 years were then spent following his father to naval stations, although he attended about 20 schools during this time. Yeah, not a good way to grow up.
No, not a good way to grow up, and it's not something I ever thought about, that aside from uprooting these kids all over the world, that their education is bound to suffer.
Yeah, because even if in theory, in 1 year of school you're going to learn A, B and C, doesn't mean every school's going to learn it in that order, and you could be learning B again and again and again and again and never learn A and C, and it's like, it's going to have a detrimental effect, definitely. He was frequently disciplined in school for fighting, and later wrote, "The repeated farewells to friends rank among the saddest regrets of a childhood constantly disrupted by the demands of my father's career. At each new school I arrived eager to make, by means of my insolent attitude, new friends to compensate for the loss of others. At each new school I grew more determined to assert my crude individualism, and at each new school I became a more unrepentant pain in the neck." In 1951, McCain enrolled at Episcopal High School in Alexandria, an academically superior all-male private boarding school with a rigorous honour code, tradition of hazing and Spartan living environment. Most of the children were sons of wealthy Southerners from whom McCain got a glimpse of life and career aspirations outside Navy culture. He was given the nicknames Punk and McNasty due to his combative, fiery disposition.
McNasty.
Yep.
That's a solid nickname.
McCain enjoyed and cultivated a tough guy image and also made new friends. McCain earned 2 varsity letters in wrestling, excelling in lighter weight classes. He also played on the junior varsity football team and the tennis teams, and participated in student newspaper, yearbook and drama club activities.
Interesting.
A little variety there. Normally it tends to be one way or the other, but he's mixing the sport and non-sporty activities quite well.
Yeah. And drama and newspaper.
With what he later termed an undistinguished but acceptable academic record, McCain graduated from high school in 1954. Having done well on his entrance exams, McCain entered the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland in July 1954, following in the footsteps of his father and grandfather.
Yeah, I wonder whether, because you said when he was at the Alexandria Academy, he got a taste of life from outside the Navy, but then as soon as he finished school, he went straight into the Navy.
Yeah, it was, school to Navy, no in between. He had not been ordered to go there by his parents, but later wrote, "I remember simply recognising my eventual enrolment at the academy as an immutable fact of life and accepting it without comment." Which I guess makes sense if your father and grandfather were in the Navy, and you've grown up in the Navy environment. I guess it's just, I'll go into the Navy. Yeah,
makes it, I don't know, like just the way he said an immutable fact of life. Well, I mean, I hate to nitpick, but you went and signed up for the Navy.
Oh, yeah, it's totally him.
Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, well, I'm going to have to join the Navy, so I may as well just join the Navy. Well, what?
Ambivalent about his presence in the Academy, McCain chose not to conform to the Academy's rules and some of its traditions. Each year, he was given over 100 demerits, earning him membership in the Century Club. These were for offences such as shoes not being shined, formation faults, rooms in disorder, and talking out of place. His father came to the Academy to reprimand him on his behaviour a number of times.
I wonder if his father, because he said my mum and dad didn't say that I had to go into the Navy. I wonder if his dad was going, I really don't want him in the Navy. He's going to be such a fucking embarrassment to me if he goes to the Navy. And he turns around and goes, join the Navy. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake, son. We said you didn't have to. In fact, we begged and pleaded with you not to.
He later stated that he hated plebe year, the trial by ordeal and hazing of entering midshipmen that would eventually weed out 1/4 of the class. He did not take well to those of higher rank arbitrarily wielding power over him, which seems strange if you're going into a military, but...
Yeah, it's one of the reasons, I mean, aside from the whole military and stuff thing, but it's like, no, I have a problem with authority. If there's ever national service or conscription or what, okay, I've probably got an exemption now, but
yeah, I think you're safe. I don't want to sound mean, but if they're calling you up, Han, we're pretty fucked.
I was going to say, yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah, you can push a wheelchair across the battlefield, no problem. But no, just people shouting at you and telling you what to do all the time. Nah, mate. I'm with him on that one, but I made the decision not to go into that environment and then be a dick about it.
During this time, he competed as a lightweight boxer for 3 years, where he lacked skills but was fearless and didn't have a reverse gear. In his final year, he managed the battalion boxing team to a brigade championship. Possessed of strong intelligence, McCain did well in a few subjects that interested him, such as English literature, history, and government. There was a fixed Bachelor of Science curriculum taken by all midshipmen. McCain's classmates were impressed with his cramming abilities on mathematics, science, and engineering courses, and though his low grades were by inclination and not ability, McCain later acknowledged that those courses were a struggle for him. So he did well in the ones he liked, just because the others didn't interest him. He didn't really try, which, fair enough. Yep. I think everyone who's ever been to school can relate to that one.
Yep.
I can do it, I just don't want to, kind of attitude.
Yeah, that was basically my entire school. You could do so much better if you tried. Yeah, but what would be the point in that?
Plus, a lot of the arguments they used to use back then, even in our school days, don't exist anymore. It's like, well, you gotta learn maths because you're not going to carry a calculator around in your pocket when you're older. It's like, yeah, I fucking do.
Well, you lied about that, so you probably lied about maths too.
His class rank was further lowered by poor grades for conduct and leadership, which reflected his sloppy appearance, rebellious attitude, and poor relations with his company officer. Despite his low standing, he was popular and a leader among his fellow midshipmen.
Oh my God, was John McCain the Fonz?
Yes, he was.
He was like, oh my God, John McCain, he's like so cool.
Well, the next bit does kind of tie into that, because good at attracting women, he was famed for organising off-yard activities with groups who called themselves the Bad Bunch. One classmate said that being on liberty with John McCain was like being in a train wreck. Other midshipmen were annoyed by his behaviour, and in June 1957, during a training cruise aboard the destroyer USS Hunt, found McCain showing good skills at the con, and destination stop to Rio de Janeiro led to dreamlike romance with a Brazilian fashion model and ballerina, Maria Gracinda, that persisted through a Christmas time reunion. So it sounds like he's just organising parties and wooing women in Rio and is just a bit of a rebel.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, there were probably like alcohol, restrictions on like the base or whatever, weren't there? So he was sort of smuggling people off the base to go and get laid and drunk, wasn't he? By the sound of things.
Essentially, which, good on him at this point. Yeah. You know, he sounds like he's all right to hang out with so far.
Yeah.
In June 1958, McCain graduated from the Naval Academy. He was 5th from the bottom in his class, coming 894th out of 899. Skin of his teeth.
Yeah.
He was commissioned as an ensign on the 4th of June 1958. He spent 2 years as a naval aviator in training, first at Naval Air Station Pensacola in Florida through September 1959, and then at Naval Air Station Corpus Christi in Texas, during which time he was promoted to lieutenant junior grade. He earned a reputation as a party man, as he drove a Corvette, dated an exotic dancer named Marie the Flame of Florida, spent all his free time on the beach or in the bachelor officers' quarters room turned bar and friendly gambling den.
I mean, he's making the best of it.
Yeah.
He seems quite, I mean, in a way, it seems like quite a shrewd thing because, you know, like military wages are pretty decent. You don't have to worry about paying rent or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The thing is as well, he's going to be forming like relationships here with other people who are going to work their way up in the military and be stationed certain places so that, you know, it's not just going to be, oh yeah, John McCain, I served with him, I'll do him a favour. It's, oh yeah, it's John, I remember when he took me out and got me laid. Yeah, I'll help him out. You know, it's like, you know, he's going to have a lot of favours he can call in later on.
Absolutely. And a lot of blackmail material as well.
Yeah. He began as a subpar flyer and had limited patience for studying aviation manuals and spent study time reading history books instead.
Oh, that's not really something that you can skimp on.
It's all right. He'll pick it up later.
Wow. What's this one do again? Don't touch that one!
During a March 1960 practice run in Texas, he lost track of his altitude and speed, and his single-seat, single-engine, piston-driven AD-6 Sky Raider crashed into Corpus Christi Bay and sank to the bottom.
What?
Although momentarily knocked unconscious by the impact, he squeezed out of the cockpit and swam 10 feet to the surface, escaping without major injuries.
Holy fuck, he was lucky.
He graduated from flight school 2 months later.
And they still let him graduate from flight school.
2 months after crashing into the bay.
After crashing into the bay. And his excuse for crashing into the bay was, I lost track of my speed and altitude. What are you doing? How do you daydream whilst you're piloting a fucking plane?
I know this is like 10 to 15 years after World War II, so they need to increase their numbers after all those losses, but they can't be this desperate.
Well, you would think that crashing, because planes aren't cheap, you would think that like right off a plane and it not being mechanical failure or not being anything other than, oh, I decided to take a book to read whilst I was flying and then I noticed that the sea was in the way and then I passed out through acceleration and then I came to, and luckily I came to with enough wherewithal and time to get out of the cockpit and be able to still work out where the top of the sea was. I mean, there are so many ways he could have died right then.
I wonder if his father maybe pulled some strings behind the scene for that one.
Well, but even if you were his father, surely you would be like, maybe I don't want my son up in a plane, considering he nearly killed himself and there's nothing trying to kill him right now.
Yeah.
You know, I think that flying is a lot harder when you're being shot at, I assume. So if he's not even good at doing it when he's not being shot at. Okay, so they let him graduate.
Yep. Starting in November 1960, McCain flew Sky Raiders with the VA-65 world-famous Fighting Tigers squadron on the aircraft carrier USS Intrepid and USS Enterprise.
Was there actually a USS Enterprise?
Yes, there was a USS Enterprise.
I did not know that.
No. Okay. Yeah, there've been a few ships named Enterprise, and one of them was a aircraft carrier.
always thought it was a bit of a weird name in Star Trek, but it makes more sense now.
Yeah, it's kind of a naval tradition.
Yeah.
The carriers were based at Naval Station Norfolk and cruised in the Caribbean and on several deployments to the Mediterranean. Thankfully, his aviation skills improved, but around December 1961, he collided with power lines while recklessly flying too low over southern Spain.
Oh my... Right, so that's... Oh, what?
The area suffered a power outage, but he was able to take his plane back to the Intrepid.
Oh...
So he just caused a blackout
we didn't
by
crash
flying.
land the second time. He just fucks a Spanish city because he was dicking about.
Yeah, essentially.
He was dicking about in what is probably a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment
Mm-hmm.
that could easily kill him.
Yep.
Okay.
6 months later, in June 1962, he was made lieutenant.
Oh my god! What for? What for? This is the... Oh, wow.
He was on alert duty on the Enterprise when it helped enforce the naval quarantine of Cuba during the October 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. In November 1963, he was rotated back to shore duty, serving 9 months on the staff at the Naval Air Basic Training Command at Pensacola. In September 1964, he became a flight instructor with the VT-7 training squadron.
What?
Look, if someone's going to train you how to fly, it's the guy who's knocked out power in Spain and crashed a ship into the ocean. Surely he's the guy, yeah?
No, that's the opposite. That's who I want. Who made that decision?
An idiot.
Yeah.
During his 1964 stint at Pensacola, McCain began a relationship with Carol Shep, a successful swimwear and runway model originally from Philadelphia. They had known each other at the Naval Academy, and she had married and then divorced one of his classmates. McCain told her that he wanted to do something important with his life, so he would be recorded in history. On July 3rd, 1965, McCain married her in Philadelphia. She already had 2 children, Douglas and Andrew, and he adopted them both in 1966. Later that same year, they had their first daughter together named Sydney. In the summer of 1965, McCain appeared as a contestant on the television quiz show Jeopardy!
Oh, I can just imagine his anecdote being, do you want to hear about some real Jeopardy? So there I was, in my plane, reading my history book, in Spain.
McCain won the first day, but lost on the second. He later said, Final Jeopardy made the difference, where the clue was, Kathy loves him, but she married Edgar Linton instead. McCain knew the novel in question, writing down, What is Wuthering Heights? But the clue was looking for a specific character, who is Heathcliff.
Ah.
So they screwed him, Han, they screwed him.
They did. I mean, yeah, mainstream media, left-wing bias.
In November 1965, he had his third accident when an apparent engine failure in his T-2 Buckeye trainer jet over the eastern shore of Virginia led to his ejecting safely before his plane crashed.
I like the use of the word apparent engine failure in
Yeah.
that, because that's him saying, well, the last time I looked like a right dick for just saying I lost track of my speed and I couldn't see the power lines. So this time it's definitely not going to be my fault. There was an engine failure. I didn't just think it would be funny to turn my plane off and try and turn it back on again whilst I was flying.
But still, that's 3 planes in 6 years. So he's averaging a plane every 2 years.
He's averaging a plane every 2 years. That's quite a frightening rate just for one person. So what did they do? Did they promote him for this?
No. After that, they slated him for combat duty for the upcoming Vietnam War.
Right. I mean, you know, I guess there is a hope that if he crash lands, he might wipe out some Viet Cong when he crashes.
Fingers crossed, I don't know. He reported to the VA-44 Replacement Air Group Squadron at Naval Air Station Cecil Field in Florida for training on the A-4 Skyhawk, a single-seat jet attack aircraft. There, he was seen as a good pilot, albeit one who tended to push the envelope in flying. Promoted to lieutenant commander in January 1967, McCain joined the aircraft carrier USS Forrestal, and by May 1967 began flying Skyhawks with the VA-46 Klansman Squadron.
Sorry, what?
Yeah, I just had to relook at that. No, it is Klansman, spelt with a C, but the Klansman Squadron.
Okay, at least it's spelled with a C.
Yeah.
I guess it might be a special thing rather than a...
And this is 67. The KKK are around. Change the
Yeah.
name. Jesus. Fuck's sake.
Mm.
At least he can't be blamed for that name, so...
No, that's true.
On July 25th, 1967, the Forrestal reached Yankee Station in the Gulf of Tonkin and joined Operation Rolling Thunder, the 1965-68 air interdiction and strategic bombing campaign against North Vietnam.
Americans and their names.
Yeah, Rolling Thunder. Okay.
Rolling Thunder.
The Alpha strikes, flown from Forrestal, were against specific pre-selected targets such as arms depot, factories and bridges. They were considered dangerous due to the strength of the North Vietnamese air defences, which used Soviet-designed and supplied surface-to-air missile anti-aircraft artillery and MiG jet interceptors.
Yeah, that's a fair amount of anti-aircraft capability.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to go up against that.
Ooh.
McCain's first 5 attack missions over North Vietnam went without incident, and while still unconcerned with major Navy regulations, McCain had garnered the reputation of a serious aviator. So I guess war has straightened him out a bit, at least.
Maybe war has made him realise that you do sort of like need to not fuck about with being shot at.
Yeah, don't dick around anymore.
They've got guns! I'm going to take this seriously.
McCain and his fellow pilots were frustrated by the micromanagement of Rolling Thunder from Washington, and he later wrote, "The target list was so restricted that we had to go back and hit the same targets over and over again. Most of our pilots flying the missions believed that our targets were virtually worthless. In all candour, we thought our civilian commanders were complete idiots who didn't have the least notion of what it took to win the war."
Well, I mean, that was, considering what happened, that's not a bad...
Yeah, he was probably fairly right about that.
Yeah. Especially if they're sending out planes on like so you're putting your pilots' lives in danger to go and destroy something that's already destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
That seems very pointless.
McCain was almost killed aboard the Forrestal on July 29th, 1967. While the Air Wing was preparing to launch attacks, a Zuni rocket from an F-4 Phantom accidentally fired across the carrier deck.
Fuck me!
It's not clear exactly what happened, but the rocket was reported to have struck either McCain's Skyhawk or one near it. The impact ruptured the Skyhawk's fuel tank, which ignited the fuel and knocked 2 bombers loose. McCain later said, "I thought my aircraft exploded. There were flames everywhere." He escaped from his jet by climbing out of the cockpit, working himself to the nose of the jet and jumping off its refueling probe onto the burning deck.
Holy shit!
Yeah. His flight suit caught on fire as he rolled through the flames, but he was able to put it out. He went to help another pilot trying to escape the fire when the first bomb exploded. McCain was thrown backwards 10 feet and suffered minor wounds when struck in the legs and chest by fragments.
Shit.
McCain helped crewmen throw unexploded bombs overboard off the hangar deck elevator, then went to the Forrestal's ready room and with other pilots watched the ensuing fire and firefighting efforts on the room's closed-circuit television. The fire killed 134 sailors.
Holy fuck!
It injured scores of others and destroyed at least 20 aircraft and took 24 hours to bring under control.
Well, yeah, I mean, boats are just made of, especially military aircraft carriers. There is so much flammable shit.
Yeah.
Not to mention all the not to mention all the fuel. Oh my fucking hell.
Yeah.
He was so fucking lucky again.
Yeah.
So lucky.
Like, considering that, it was either his plane or, one next to him that got hit. The fact that he got out of that alive.
Yeah.
That's insane. And it killed 134 others. So yeah, I have no idea how he survived that.
How he survived? How he got out of it in the first place, then went back to help somebody else, got injured, then instead of going to seek medical attention, he then went to continue helping.
Mm-hmm. In Saigon, a day after the fire, McCain praised the heroism of enlisted men who gave their lives trying to save the pilots on deck, and told a New York Times reporter, "It's a difficult thing to say, but now I've seen what the bombs and the napalm did to the people on our ship, I'm not sure that I want to drop any more of that stuff on North Vietnam."
Wow.
He added, "I always wanted to be in the Navy. I was born into it, and I never really considered another profession, but I always had trouble with regimentation." So it sounds like he's really considering leaving the military at this point.
Yeah, that really does sound like he's been really properly shaken up and then had first-hand experience of what the stuff that he's dropping does to actual human beings.
Yeah.
Like, really, really questioning things. How old is he at this point? He's about... in his 30s, probably?
Yeah, he's 31, so still a fairly young man.
Mm.
As the Forrestal headed to port for repairs, McCain volunteered to join the undermanned VA-163 Saint Squadron on board the USS Oriskany. After taking some leave in Europe and back home in Orange Park, Florida, McCain joined the Oriskany on September 30th, 1967, for a tour he expected would finish early the next summer. He volunteered to fly the squadron's most dangerous missions straight away.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
Well...
So, despite his misgivings, he's not ready to leave yet.
Yeah, but I mean, there might be... I mean, during wartime, you can't just quit.
Yeah, that's a good point. Plus, if both his father and grandfather are 4-star admirals, if you try and quit during the war... Yeah, it's probably... Yeah. I was thinking, he said he wasn't happy with the war, but then didn't leave. I suppose, you can't.
No, they probably didn't have any choice about
because they had the draft and everything as well, didn't they? So I dare say you couldn't just up and leave. Yeah. During October 1967, the pilots operated in constant 12 hours on, 12 hours off shifts. McCain would be awarded a Navy Commendation Medal for leading his air section through heavy enemy fire during an October 18th raid on the Lac Tri shipping yard in Haiphong, I think.
Are you asking for my permission?
Well, no, because it's a PH in the middle, so it's either Haiphong or Haiphong.
How's it spelled?
Haiphong. Haiphong, I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think it's Haiphong.
Yeah, I don't want to... Well, I say I don't want to get any pronunciations wrong. I do every episode, but I try not to, and I don't want to insult anyone. On October 25th, McCain successfully attacked the Phuc Yen Air Base north of Hanoi through a barrage of anti-aircraft artillery and surface-to-air missile fire, and was credited with destroying 1 aircraft on the ground and damaging 2. The raid would garner him the Air Medal. Air defences around Hanoi were at this point the strongest they would be during the entire war.
So he got the medal more for getting back safely than for what he destroyed, because they didn't seem like they destroyed all that much.
No, it did sound like it was for getting back from the mission more than anything else. On October 26th, just a day later, McCain was flying his 23rd mission, part of a 20-plane strike force against the Yen Phu thermal power plant in central Hanoi that had previously almost always been off-limits to US air raids due to the possibility of collateral damage.
Mm-hmm.
Arriving just before noon, McCain dove from 9,000 to 4,000 feet on his approach. As he neared the target, warning systems in his Skyhawk alerted him that he was being targeted by enemy fire control radar. He did not break off the bombing run and held in his dive until he released his bombs at about 3,500 feet. As he started to pull up, the Skyhawk's wing was blown off by a Soviet-made SA-2 anti-aircraft missile. His plane went into a vertical inverted spin. He bailed out upside down at high speed.
Oh, fucking hell.
The force of the ejection fractured his right arm in 3 places, his left arm, and his right leg at the knee, as well as knocking him unconscious. He parachuted down into Truc Bac Lake in Hanoi and nearly drowned, the weight of his equipment pulling him down. As he regained consciousness, he tried to free himself but could not use his arms.
Well, no, I was going to say, he's broken both his arms and one of his legs.
Eventually, he was able to free himself and inflate his life vest by using his teeth. Several Vietnamese pulled him ashore and a mob gathered around him. They spat on him, kicked him, and stripped him of his clothes. His left shoulder was crushed with the butt of a rifle, and he was bayoneted in his left foot and left groin area. He was then transported to Hanoi's Hao Lo prison, nicknamed the Hanoi Hilton by American POWs. He reached Hao Lao in bad physical condition.
Sorry. The reason that I haven't said anything is because I was just trying to digest everything that happened in the last minute or so.
Yeah, things have gone bad for him.
Yeah, it's one of those things that isn't often talked about, is injuries caused from ejection.
Oh yeah, ejection can fuck you up.
Yeah, I mean, even now, I think you're only allowed to eject twice, and then you lose your flight status because it can literally fuse your spine.
Yeah, it's like you eject when it is the last course of action because it can still kill you. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
I mean, we all know what happened to the goose.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he had all those injuries from ejecting, nearly drowned, and now he's been captured and beaten and stabbed by a crowd of Vietnamese who found him. So yeah, he's seriously fucked up at this point. At Hao Lao, his captors refused to give him medical care unless he gave them military information. They beat and interrogated him, but he only offered his rank, name, serial number, and date of birth, the only information he was required to provide under the Geneva Convention and permitted to give under the US Code of Conduct.
Sorry. The US Military Code of Conduct states, so basically it states that if you give information, even under torture...
Yeah, you're not allowed to.
That you've broken the Code of Conduct.
You can only give your name, date of birth, rank and serial number.
Yeah.
Basically the information they'd get from your dog tags, really.
Yes. I mean, talk about... Yeah, anyway. So carry on.
It's okay. Thinking that he was near death, McCain said he would give them more information if taken to the hospital, hoping that he could then put his interrogators off once he was treated. A prison doctor was called and said it was too late and he was about to die anyway. Only when the North Vietnamese discovered that his father was a high-ranking admiral did they give him any medical care.
Oh, snap.
And they nicknamed him the Crown Prince.
Yeah, you see, you'd think that would be a nice nickname, but
no,
I'm pretty sure that in that instance it probably wasn't.
2 days after his plane went down, the event and his status as a POW made the front pages of the New York Times and Washington Post. Interrogation and beatings resumed in hospital, and McCain gave the North Vietnamese his ship's names, squadron name, and the attack's intended target. This information, along with personal details of McCain's life and purported statements by McCain about the war's progress, would appear over the next 2 weeks in the North Vietnamese official newspaper. Disclosing the military information was in violation of the Code of Conduct, which McCain later wrote he regretted, although he said he saw the information as being of no practical use to the North Vietnamese. Further coerced to give future targets, he named cities that had already been bombed, and responding to demands for the names of his squadron members, he supplied instead the names of the Green Bay Packers' offensive line. He spent the next 6 weeks in hospital, receiving marginal care. A prolonged attempt to set the fractures of his right arm, done without anaesthetic, were unsuccessful. He received...
Well, no, because...
Sorry.
I was just going to say, you know, if you've left a break for long enough, then setting it back to any sort of normality is very, very difficult.
Yeah. He received an operation on his broken leg, but had no treatment for his broken left arm.
Oh.
He was temporarily taken to a clean room and interviewed by French journalist François Chalet, whose report was carried on the French television programme Panorama in January 1968, and later on the US on the CBS Evening News. This you may have actually seen this. This is a video that's gone round quite a bit online since he passed. It's basically him in his hospital bed being interviewed. So that is out there that people can go and find.
Yeah, I'll look for it after we've done.
In early December 1967, McCain was sent to a prisoner of war camp on the outskirts of Hanoi, nicknamed the Plantation.
Why was it nicknamed the Plantation?
I do not know.
Was it nicknamed the Plantation by the Americans?
Possibly. I guess so, because I think they named the other place the Hanoi Hilton, didn't they?
Yeah.
So it was probably American nickname.
Great.
He was placed into a cell with fellow officers George Day and Norris Overley, who were both Air Force pilots. They said they did not expect McCain to live. However, Overley and Day nursed McCain and kept him alive, and Dane later recalled that McCain had a fantastic will to live.
Well, you would have to.
You've kind of got no other choice at this point.
Yeah, you would have to have a fantastic will to live. Either that, or he just thought that he cheated death so many times by now. I mean, he's only 30 and he's cheated death like, what, 3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
So at that point, you've got to think that you're maybe special in some way.
In March 1968, McCain was put into solitary confinement, where he would remain for 2 years.
Oh.
Yeah. In mid-June, Major Bay, commander of the North Vietnamese prison camp system, offered McCain a chance to return home. The North Vietnamese wanted to score a worldwide propaganda coup by appearing merciful, yet also wanted to show other POWs that members of the elite, such as McCain, were willing to be treated preferentially. McCain turned the offer down.
Mm-hmm.
This was due to the POW's first in, first out interpretation of the US Code of Conduct. He said he would only accept the offer if every man captured before him was released as well. It's reported that Bay and his assistants were enraged by his response and told McCain that things would get worse for him.
Well, of course.
In late August 1968, a program of vigorous torture methods began. They used rope bindings to put him in prolonged, painful positions and severely beat him every 2 hours, all while he was suffering from dysentery. His right leg was re-injured, his ribs were cracked, some teeth were broken at the gum line, and his left arm was re-fractured. It was during this period that he attempted suicide, but was stopped by his guards. After 4 days, McCain signed and taped an anti-American propaganda confession that said, in part, "I am a black criminal, and I have performed the deeds of an air pirate. I almost died, and the Vietnamese people saved my life, thanks to the doctors." McCain said that he was haunted then and since with the belief that he had dishonoured his country, family, comrades and himself with his statement, but later wrote, "I had learned what we all learn over here. Every man has his breaking point, and I had reached mine."
Yeah.
2 weeks later, his captors tried to force him to sign a second statement, but he refused. He sometimes received 2 or 3 beatings a week because of his continued resistance. The sustained mistreatment went on for over a year. His refusal to cooperate, laced with loud obscenities directed towards his guards, were often heard by other POWs. On Christmas Eve, 1968, a church service for the POWs was staged for photographers and film cameras. McCain defied North Vietnamese instruction to be quiet, speaking out details of his treatment when shouting, "Fuck you, you son of a bitch," and giving the finger whenever a camera was pointed at him. Which, I gotta be honest, that's a really fucking ballsy thing to do, because you know they're gonna fuck you up for that. McCain refused to meet with various anti-Vietnam War peace groups coming to Hanoi, not wanting to give either them or North Vietnam a propaganda victory based on his connection with his father. Because of his injuries, he earned the nickname Crip with other POWs. You're right.
Yeah.
This is taking a turn, I know, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. No, I mean, I you know.
See, I knew he was a POW. It's one of the few things I knew about him, but I didn't know how bad it got for him.
No, I knew he was a POW. I didn't, you know, because yeah, there are ways to sort of make your life as a POW better, and there are ways to make your life as a POW immeasurably worse. And he has gone the route of being a support to his other POWs, rather than stabbing them in the back to make his life easier.
On the 6th of June 1969, a United Press International report described a Radio Hanoi broadcast made on June 2nd that denied any mistreatment of POWs. The transmission, one of a series of North Vietnamese propaganda broadcasts on the subject of prisoners, used excerpts from McCain's spoken forced confession a year before, including statements such as, "I have bombed the cities, towns and villages and caused injuries and even death for the people of North Vietnam. After I was captured, I was taken to a hospital in Hanoi where I received very good medical treatment. I was given an operation on my leg which enabled me to walk again, and a cast on my right arm, which was badly broken in 3 places. The doctors are very good, and they knew a great deal about medicine." Yeah, not faked at all.
No, but surely when the cameras went to the POW camp, they would have seen what sort of state he was in.
They would have seen what they were allowed to see. You know, it would have been so staged.
No, I know, but if the cameras were, if he was able to finger, to, you know, give the finger to the cameras and to shoot on camera, then they've got to be close enough to see that he's got the nickname Crip.
Yeah.
So he's going to be limping or walking with a cane, or his left arm is going to be fucked. You know, they would have seen all that, surely.
But they can probably explain that way with, yeah, he was given an operation that let him walk. He's still going to walk with a limp, but at least he's walking now. And, you know, well, he said we gave him a cast on his right arm. We didn't mention his left. You know, we had to pick one arm. We went for the one that was worse to try and make him better the best we could. You know, they're going to have things ready to spin in a way that, you know, helps their side and bolsters their lies.
Yeah.
Starting in late 1969, treatment of McCain and other POWs suddenly improved. North Vietnamese leader Ho Chi Minh had died the previous month, possibly causing a change in policy towards POWs. Also, a badly beaten and weakened POW had been released that summer, disclosed to the world's press the conditions to which they were being subjected, and the National League of Families of American Prisoners and Missing in Southeast Asia, which included McCain's brother Joe, heightened awareness of the POW's plight. In December 1969, McCain was transferred back to Hao Lao, Hanoi Hilton, and his solitary confinement ended in March 1970. When the prisoners talked about what they wanted to do once they got out, McCain said he wanted to become president. McCain and other prisoners were moved around to different camps at times, but conditions over the next several years were generally more tolerable than they had been before. Back at the Hanoi Hilton, from November 1971 onwards, McCain and other POWs cheered the resumed bombing of the North starting in April 1972, whose targets included the Hanoi area and whose daily orders were issued by Jack McCain, who knew his son was in the vicinity. The Paris...
Sorry.
Yeah?
So, Jack McCain... Are they saying that Jack McCain was bombing indiscriminately even though he could have...
No, he
collateral damaged his son, or that Jack McCain was trying to bomb Hanoi so that his son would be released quicker?
I think it was a case of, from what I've seen, it's a case of they had targets in that area they needed to bomb, but it was always a possibility that his son would be in some of these places because they're being moved around. But he still went ahead with it, knowing that to win the war it could cost him his son.
Right.
That's what I gathered from the bits I saw. On January 27, 1973, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, ending direct US involvement in the war, but the Operation Homecoming agreements for the 591 American POWs took much longer. McCain was finally released from captivity on March 14, 1973, being taken by bus to Gai Lam Airport, then transferred to US custody, where he was flown back to Clark Airfield Base in the Philippines.
When was he finally released?
1973, March 14th.
Okay.
Although McCain was held as a prisoner of war in North Vietnam for 5.5 years, nearly 5 of them after his refusal to accept the out-of-sequence repatriation offer. Sorry, altogether he spent, not although. So yeah, he was a prisoner for 5.5 years, and he could have got out after 6 months.
Mm.
His wartime injuries left him permanently incapable of raising either arm more than 80 degrees. For his actions as a POW, McCain was awarded the Silver Star Medal, the Legion of Merit, 3 Bronze Star Medals, another instance of the Navy Commendation Medal, and the Purple Heart.
Quite a lot of medals.
Yeah. It's like Purple Heart was I think, kind of guaranteed. I've learned from my research, it's basically if you get injured during a war, you get the Purple Heart. So,
yeah.
But the rest of them, yeah, that's a lot of medals. Upon his return to the United States a few days later, McCain was reunited with his wife Carol and his family. She had suffered her own crippling near-death ordeal during his captivity, due to an automobile accident in December 1969 that left her hospitalized for 6 months and facing 23 operations and ongoing physical therapy.
Oh, shit. And of course he wouldn't know anything about that, would he?
Yep. By the time McCain saw her, she was 4 inches shorter, walked on crutches, and this is a quote I took from something here, substantially heavier. I don't know why they made a point of saying that, but I guess they're reinforcing the whole, she's changed since he last saw her.
Well, yeah, and what would America be if they didn't comment on a woman's appearance?
Yeah. But then he's changed as well. Like, one of the things I realised I forgot to include in this, during his time as a POW, his hair went white.
I was going to say, did his hair go white?
Yeah. So he's come back injured, can't raise his arm more than 80 degrees, and with white hair. So neither one of them is the person they last saw at this point.
No.
As a returned POW, McCain became a celebrity. The New York Times ran a story and front page photo of him getting off the plane at Clark Air Base in the Philippines. He authored a 13-page cover story describing his ordeal and his support for the Nixon administration's handling of the war in the US News and World Report. He also participated in parades in Orange Park and elsewhere and made personal appearances before groups where he showed strong speaking skills, and he was given the key to the city of Jacksonville in Florida. The McCains became frequent guests of honor at dinners hosted by the governor of California, Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan, the actor?
Ah, I heard of him. Yeah, he did some stuff, didn't he?
McCain had admired Ronald Reagan while in captivity and afterwards, believing him a man who saw honor in Vietnam service and a potential leader who would not lead the nation into a war it was unwilling to win. McCain underwent 3 operations and other treatment for his injuries, spending 3 months at the Navy Regional Medical Center in Jacksonville. Psychological tests were also given to all returning POWs, but showed that McCain had adjusted exceptionally well to repatriation, and had an ambitious, striving, successful pattern of adjustment. McCain told examiners that he withstood his ordeal by having faith in country, United States Navy, family, and God. It is claimed that McCain did not experience flashbacks or nightmares of his Vietnam experience, although due to the association with prison guards, the sound of keys rattling would cause him to tense up.
So it does seem like, I know that it wasn't a diagnosis back then, but it seems like he didn't actually have PTSD.
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly where and how. It does come up a lot later on, further in his life, and it is reiterated that, yeah, he kind of came through 5.5 years of torture as a POW without PTSD, which I find astonishing.
Yeah.
Especially as he wasn't just tortured as a standard POW, they saw him as a valuable person. They wanted to break him because of his father, so they gave him a lot of attention. And
yes,
to come out of that well adjusted, that's incredible.
Yeah.
McCain was promoted to commander effective of July 1973 and attended the National War College in Fort McNair in Washington.
So by the time he got out of Vietnam and was repatriated and went through all his treatment and stuff, he at that point decided that he wanted to stay in the military.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what happened to all that? I don't want to bomb people because they fuck them up, or perhaps I don't want my foreign policy to make me seem like such an animal to other human beings that they fuck me up for 5 years.
I guess 5 years in a prison camp will change some of those views. I don't know. It's a complex position to be in.
Oh yeah, I'm not denying that.
During this time, he engaged in 9 months of painful physiotherapy, especially to get his knees to bend again. McCain recuperated just enough to pass his flight physical and to have his flight status reinstated.
Why?
God knows. He wants to fly again.
But, I mean, if you can't raise your... I mean, I can't...
Yeah, it is baffling. In August 1974, he was assigned to the replacement air group, the VA-174 Hellraisers. He became its executive officer in 1975, and on July 1st, 1976, he was made their commanding officer. As the commanding officer, he relied upon a relatively unorthodox leadership style based upon the force of his personality. He removed personnel he thought ineffective and sought to improve morale and productivity by establishing an informal rapport with enlisted men. Which, based on what we heard in his childhood, it doesn't surprise me that's his approach to leadership.
No, sorry, I just took a bite or something. No, not at all. The fact that, I mean, the whole style of military authoritarianism where you're consistently denigrating people is the worst type of leadership style anyway.
Yeah.
So it's understandable that he doesn't want to emulate that.
He was forceful in demanding that respect be given to the female officers just beginning to arrive into the unit. McCain's leadership abilities were credited with improving the unit's aircraft readiness. For the first time, all 50 of its aircraft were able to fly.
Wow.
Although some operational metrics declined during this period, the pilot safety improved to the point of having 0 accidents.
Learn by example.
Yeah.
Don't do what I did.
I think that's kind of where he's probably coming from. He later said that being the commanding officer of the VA-174 was the most rewarding assignment of his naval career. During this time, when in Jacksonville, the McCain's marriage began to falter. McCain had extramarital affairs and was seen with other women in social settings and developed a reputation among his colleagues for womanizing.
It seems like he was pretty much always like that, though.
Yeah. He later said, "My marriage's collapse was attributed to my own selfishness and immaturity more than it was to Vietnam, and I cannot escape blame by pointing a finger at the war. The blame was entirely mine." His wife Carol later stated that the failure was not due to her accident or Vietnam, and that, "I attribute the breakup of our marriage more to John turning 40 and wanting to be 25 again than I do to anything else." I think if he's always been like that, he wants to recapture his youth, and he's been in prison for 5 years. Yeah, kind of.
Also, I'm not being funny, but, the papers did say that she put on weight, so, Of course he's not going to fancy it anymore. Listeners, that was a joke.
In 1976, McCain briefly thought of running for the US House Representatives for Florida. He had the support of some local figures in Jacksonville, but was convinced by other Republican Party leaders that he did not have sufficient political experience, funding, or popular support to defeat longtime Democrat incumbent Charles E. Bennett. Instead, he worked so hard for Ronald Reagan's 1976 Republican primary campaign that his base commander reprimanded him for being too politically active.
It happens a lot, that if there is an entrenched seat, the other party won't fund the campaign because they just see it as a waste of money. If he'd been in a different place, then he would have had favourable support from the RNC.
As his tenure with VA-174 was ending, McCain was assigned to a low-profile desk job within the Naval Air System Command. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral James Holloway thought this assignment a waste of McCain's social talents, and instead, in July 1977, McCain was appointed to the Senate Liaison Office with the Navy's Office of Legislative Affairs.
So was he sort of shunted aside because his... sorry, I can't remember who it was who said that he was too politically involved.
His base commander's kind of given him a low-profile desk job to kind of put him to the side.
But then someone else went, "Hey, why don't you go into be,
Yeah,
someone
turned around and was like, well, that's not the right position for him. Recognised his talents and moved him again. He later said that the liaison job represented his real entry into the world of politics and the beginning of his second career as a public servant.
I hate the fact that politicians call themselves public servants. It's like...
No, they're not.
Yeah, be a proper fucking public servant and get paid a public servant's wage.
Yeah. His lively personality and knowledge of military matters made his post in the Russell Senate office building a popular gathering spot for senators and staff. McCain was influenced by senators of both parties and formed an especially strong bond with John Tower of Texas, the ranking member of the Senate Armed Service Committee. During 1978 and 79, he played a key behind-the-scenes role in gaining congressional funding for a new supercarrier against the wishes of the Carter administration and Navy Secretary W. Graham Clayton Jr.
Sorry. So he managed to get funding passed for a supercarrier that the person who was in command of the Navy didn't feel was warranted.
Yeah, and the presidency as well.
Yeah.
So that's some fancy finagling to do that.
It's more just like, I don't know, I see it as less fancy finagling and more just being bullish about the fucking military-industrial complex, really.
In August 79, McCain was promoted to naval captain and became director of the Senate Liaison Office. During his time there, the Senate Liaison Office enjoyed one of its few periods of high influence. In April 79, while attending a military reception for senators in Hawaii, McCain met Cindy Lou Hensley, 18 years his junior, who was a teacher from Phoenix, Arizona. They began dating, travelling between Arizona and Washington to see each other, and John McCain urged his wife Carol to accept a divorce. The McCains stopped cohabiting in January 1980, and John McCain filed for divorce in February, which Carol accepted at the time.
So he was already dating when he was still living with his wife.
Yeah.
Classy man. So he started dating somebody 18 years his junior whilst he's still living with his wife.
Yep.
Classy.
After Carol did not respond to court summons, the uncontested divorce became official in Fort Walton Beach in Florida on the 2nd of April 1980. McCain gave Carol a settlement that included full custody of their children, alimony, child support including college tuition, houses in Virginia and Florida, and lifelong financial support for her ongoing medical treatments.
Okay, well that was fairly honourable.
Yeah, so, it sounded like, he started dating someone else while married to her, but it sounds like at that point their marriage was kind of over anyway, and they parted on fairly good terms.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the worst outcome from someone dates someone else whilst married I've seen.
No.
On May 17th, 1980, McCain and Hensley married in Phoenix. McCain's children were upset with him and did not attend the wedding, but after several years they reconciled with both him and Cindy.
Well, it's a bit, the one thing that did sort of stand out about that settlement was that he gave full custody. So he didn't actually have any desire to maintain being a parent to his kids, did he?
No.
He financially supported them, but he had no desire to remain in their lives.
Whether or not that's down to, you could argue that he spent, including like the time he was serving in Vietnam before he was captured, he probably spent at least minimum 6 years away from his kids during their young, it's going to cause some kind of distance between them and stuff. So it's going to be difficult, but still, he basically just gave up all parental responsibilities to his kids.
Yeah.
It's kind of a dick move.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling that us saying kind of a dick move is going to become a recurring catchphrase.
Oh yeah.
for this series of episodes.
Yeah, as the episodes go, well, episode 1, so far it's like, he's not the best, but wow, impressive. From episode 2 onwards, it's, kind of a dick move will definitely be the theme.
Yeah. Except for those moments that are totally a dick move, not just kind of a dick move.
Yeah. Around the end of 1980, McCain decided to retire from the Navy. He had not been given a major sea command, and his physical condition had deteriorated, causing him to fail the flight physical. McCain thought that he might make Rear Admiral, but probably not Vice Admiral, and never become a 4-star Admiral as his grandfather and father had. He later wrote that he did not anguish over his decision, although it pained his mother, who thought congressional careers paled in comparison to top naval ones. He was excited by the idea of becoming a member of Congress, and was soon recruiting a campaign manager for a planned run at the House seat for Arizona. He retired with an effective date of April 1st, 1981, the rank of captain, and a disability pension due to his wartime injuries.
I don't know. I mean, I could be talking out of turn here because I don't actually know what the rules are in the UK, although it is a much smaller country. But you know, he's from Jacksonville. He's lived in Jacksonville, but he wants to run for the Senate in Arizona, which is obviously a seat that was available for him to run to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you have to live there for like 6 months or something in order to be able to run for government. And it's like you have absolutely no connection to this place. You are just you targeted a place that you thought you could win in.
Yeah,
that's really not being a public servant.
No.
Anyway.
For his service in the Senate Liaison Office, he was awarded a Gold Star in lieu of a second award of the Legion of Merit. On March 22nd, 1981, his father, Jack McCain, died. On March 27th, McCain attended his father's funeral at Arlington National Cemetery wearing his uniform for the last time before signing his discharge papers, and later that day flew to Phoenix with his wife Cindy to begin his new life. And that brings an end to the military portion of John McCain's life and the end of this first episode.
Okay.
So, how are you feeling at the minute about John McCain and everything?
I'm trying not to be coloured by his subsequent political career, which I do know a bit more about, and also, you know, the fact that he was a Republican is always going to have a big question mark over overhead. I don't know. He did some honourable things. He did some not so honourable things. I mean, he was captured and he survived torture, but if he had aborted his bombing run when the radar on the plane told him he was being targeted, that might never have happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle with military anyway, because I don't think it should be a glorified career for anybody. I do like Gareth Reynolds' take on it, which is like, you know, to say that I don't support my military overseas is to say I don't support military overseas when all I'm basically arguing is that they shouldn't be overseas, that they should be safe at home rather than us engaging in all these wars. I sort of feel that, yeah, especially in America, there is a lot of reverence paid to a military career, which I have personal issues about. No, because he said that a couple of months previous, he'd sort of said, "Oh, I saw what bombs did to people, and I don't particularly want to bomb people anymore." But then he obviously did follow orders and complete his missions. When I'm pretty sure there are a number of people that who, having came to that conclusion, actually didn't. You know, there's a lot of research to suggest that that people that a lot of on the ground soldiers don't actually shoot to kill. In fact, try and shoot not to kill in a lot of occasions because they don't want to just indiscriminately kill other human beings.
Yeah. Plus, that last mission he did, that was previously a no-go area because of collateral civilian targets. So at that point, they'd turn around and said, well, we'll go for it anyway. So even more likely to cause civilian injuries and death. So for him to go from, I don't want to drop these bombs on the enemy, to, yeah, let's drop them on places where they can hit civilians, it's not a good move.
Doesn't seem like an epiphany that lasted.
No.
No.
And that could be down to, in large part, down to being from such a big, successful, important military family, and, you know, that he could have been, you know, in a tough situation personally of how to process that and stuff, but he still didn't have to make those choices.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that, you know, armies are indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not something he's ever said, but you don't know what sort of things were put into his ear after he came out so publicly and said he had a problem with it from his family or commanding officers or whatever, because I can't imagine that something didn't happen to him after he said that publicly.
Oh, yeah, guaranteed he had, at bare minimum, a very stern talking to. Yeah, I can't help but have a little bit of a sense of respect for him for having survived what he went through. Whilst a POW as well. It's I didn't know how bad it was for him and everything he went through over there, and I found it absolutely astonishing that he not only went through that, but came back with no psychological damage as well.
Yeah, there does come a point where, you know, he obviously did hit rock bottom. He attempted to commit suicide, but then after that, it seems like he did gain some of that strength back again.
Yeah.
And sort of at that point went, yeah, surviving at this point becomes the biggest fuck you to my captors.
Well, we'll see how your views change once we get into the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Because this is only a small portion of his life. He's only hit 40 so far, so...
Yeah, and he hasn't even got into politics yet.
Mm-hmm. Which is where we'll carry on next time with his start into politics.
Okay, looking forward to it. Luckily, I only have to wait until you sign off and then we do another interview.
Yeah.
To find out what happens. Lips behind the curtain doing this in one time.
If people enjoyed this and want to follow you online, do you have any social media that you want to plug?
Feel free to follow me on Facebook. That's basically where I hang out.
Sweet. Yeah. Go check Han out on Facebook. For us here at Eccentric Earth, if you enjoyed the episode and you don't follow us on social media already, we have a Twitter, which is at eccentric_earth. We've got a Facebook, www.facebook.com/eccentric earth. And we're on Instagram. If you want to get in contact with us to give us feedback or for suggestions for future episodes, our email address is eccentricearth@outlook.com. And we're on all major podcast providers and YouTube, so please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and please leave us a review. Well, it's been fun so far, Han. You've already lifted the curtain, so they know this isn't a real goodbye between us, but thank you for joining me. And I'll see you next time in a few minutes.
Yep, thank you for having me, Amy. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.